They called her on stage to humiliate her. Just a cruel joke in front of the whole academy. But the moment she touched the bow to the strings, the room froze, and everything changed. The teachers who laughed the loudest suddenly found their voices stolen. What happened next was something no one saw coming. This is the story of Maya Brooks, a girl they tried to break with shame, and how she rewrote her place in the world, one note at a time. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments, and if you've ever been underestimated, this story will hit home. Stick around, because what Maya does next will stay with you forever. Maya Brooks was 12 years old, but the weight she carried made her feel older than most grown-ups. Quiet by nature, she moved through the grand hallways of Sterling Heights Academy like a shadow, always present, never noticed. Her days didn't end with the school bell. While others rushed to their drivers or parents' waiting cars, Maya stayed behind, helping her father clean the classrooms, mop the marble floors, and empty the trash bins that others ignored. Dressed in second-hand sweaters and faded jeans, she blended into the background of a school where students wore blazers. Pressed to perfection, and names carried more weight than talent. In her worn-out backpack, tucked between old textbooks and a nearly broken pencil case, she carried a sketchbook of musical notes. Unfinished melodies she scribbled during lunch breaks, between cleaning assignments, or whenever her heart ached, quietly. She didn't speak much, not because she had nothing to say, but because the world around her rarely listened. Her father, Samuel Brooks, was the school janitor, a man of few words but deep soul. He walked with a quiet dignity that came not from his job, but from the life he had lived before it. Years ago, he was a street violinist, playing on subway platforms and park corners, earning coins and applause in equal measure. But when Maya's mother passed, he packed away his dreams and picked up a mop, choosing stability over passion so his daughter could grow up in a world better than the one he knew. His fingers, once graceful on a violin's neck, were now thick, with calluses from years of hard labor. But he never stopped humming, soft tunes under his breath, old rhythms that somehow kept the music alive inside their modest apartment. At the center of the school's pride stood Mr. Victor Langston, Sterling Heights Academy's celebrated music director. With his silver combed-back hair and tailored suits, he moved with an air of superiority, clinging tightly to the traditions of classical music and the elite students who could afford years of private lessons. Langston believed music was inherited, not discovered, that it belonged to those bred for the stage, not those born to sweep beneath it. He never spared a glance at Maya, nor her father, except to occasionally correct them on hallway cleaning schedules or the arrangement of orchestra chairs. The academy itself was a monument to discipline and privilege. Its towering archways, gold. Chandeliers and meticulously polished floors gave off the cold shine of excellence. In this world of refinement, Maya's presence was an anomaly. She knew it, felt it in the way eyes slid past her. Conversations halted when she entered a room, and doors stayed metaphorically, and sometimes literally, closed. Yet, among all the places that reminded her she didn't belong, there was one space she claimed as her own, the basement. Hidden beneath the main stage, cluttered with broken music stands and forgotten instruments, it was her sanctuary. There, she found her father's old violin, cracked but playable. And there, away from judgment, she practiced. No formal training, no applause, just her, the strings, and the ache of wanting to be heard. Whispers soon began swirling around the school about the upcoming annual recital, the most prestigious event of the year, attended by wealthy parents, talent scouts, and alumni. Only the best were chosen to perform, handpicked by Mr. Langston himself. Maya knew her name wasn't even a consideration, but then, one day, it appeared, typed at the bottom of the roster, out of place and out of order. Students laughed. Teachers smirked. Someone had added her as a joke, but Maya didn't laugh. She simply stared at the list, blinked once, and walked away, quiet as ever, but with something new stirring behind her eyes. The week leading up to the recital brought a nervous kind of energy to Sterling Heights Academy. Students scurried from one rehearsal to another, tuning instruments, perfecting solos, and whispering gossip between sheet music pages. In the middle of it all, during a lunch break filled with smug laughter and half-eaten sandwiches, a group of privileged students began mocking the recital list. One of them, with a sly grin, nudged Mr. Langston and said, "Why not let the janitor's kid perform too?" The others burst into laughter. It wasn't a serious suggestion, just another dig at Maya Brooks, who they saw more as background noise than an actual person. But Mr. Langston, with his arms folded and ego high, chuckled under his breath. "Why not?" he muttered, his voice laced with sarcasm. He pulled the list toward him, and in a flourish that felt both cruel and theatrical, added Maya's name, at the very bottom. The room erupted again, as if the recital had already become a comedy show. Maya heard about it not from an official announcement, but through the quiet, venomous whispers that seemed to chase her through the hallways. "Did you see? The janitor's girl is performing. What's she gonna do? Sweep the stage with her bow? Bet that violin smells like a trash bin." The words were sharp, but Maya's face never cracked. She didn't smile. She didn't protest. She simply acknowledged it as fact, as if she had been waiting her whole life for someone, anyone, to say her name out loud in a room full of people, even if it came cloaked in mockery. From that day forward, Maya's world shifted. While the others rehearsed under stage lights and professional guidance, she disappeared into the basement with her father's cracked violin. The strings were worn, the bow uneven, and her fingers untrained, but there was something else there, something deeper. She played through pain, her wrists throbbing and her fingertips burning. The old concrete walls absorbed every mistake, every tear that slipped down her cheek when a note broke or a chord fell flat. Her father, Samuel, didn't say much during those late-night practices. He sat quietly in the corner, eyes steady, hands working to glue the instrument back together piece by piece. He didn't question her courage, he recognized it. It was the same courage that had once driven him to play in the streets, to survive heartbreak, to keep going when there was nothing left to give. At school, Maya walked the halls invisible. A cue again. Except now, the invisibility carried a soundtrack of hushed laughter and pointed looks. No one offered her a nod of encouragement. No teacher asked if she was prepared. She was expected to fail, and most were eager to watch. But at home, her world told a different story. In their small apartment, she filled the silence with her father's lullabies, reimagined and rearranged, her bow trembling as she shaped old songs into something new and wild and hers. Her fingers bled onto the strings some nights, but she played on, determined to be more than the punchline they had cast her as. The night before the recital, Maya didn't speak a word. She sat on the floor with the violin in her lap, bow resting beside her, eyes fixed on the ceiling as if trying to memorize the silence. Samuel found her there hours later, fast asleep, curled around the violin as if it were her only shield. He didn't wake her. He just draped a blanket over her shoulders, kissed the top of her head, and turned off the light. When morning came, Sterling Heights was abuzz. Parents filled the auditorium, teachers smoothed out programs, and students polished instruments. One last time. Backstage, the lineup was called out, each name met with claps or polite smiles. Then came the moment everyone had secretly anticipated. "Maya Brooks," someone said, and a ripple of snickering spread through the student crowd. But as Maya stepped out from the curtain, the laughter didn't last. She walked slowly, deliberately, violin cradled in her arms. She met no one's gaze, but her eyes, steady and unblinking, said everything. This may have started as a joke, but Maya hadn't come to be laughed at. She had come to be heard. The auditorium glowed in warm amber tones, casting reflections off polished wood and golden chandeliers as guests settled into their velvet-cushioned seats. Sterling Heights Academy spared no detail on recital night. Every student on stage dressed in pristine uniforms or elegant dresses, polished shoes clicking softly against the stage floor. One by one, performers emerged into the spotlight, greeted by polite applause. Violins sang, cellos whispered, and flutes fluttered through the air like practiced birds in flight. Proud parents nodded along. Teachers sat tall, their eyes gleaming with pride and predictability. And then, the list reached its final name, one that wasn't supposed to be there. Maya Brooks. Her name echoed into a stunned silence. For a moment, no one moved. Then came the quiet ripple of a suppressed laugh from the back of the room. Low, smug, and familiar. Mr. Langston folded his arms from the side of the stage, his lips drawn, into the faintest smirk, confident in the farce he had allowed to unfold. This was the moment. The joke they'd set in motion was about to play out under the glow of stage lights. Maya stepped onto the stage slowly, not like the students before her, but with a stillness that seemed foreign in such a polished space. She wore a plain gray sweater, sleeves just a bit too long, and worn black jeans tucked into old, scuffed sneakers. Her violin, fragile and cracked along the neck, looked like it had been rescued from a junkyard. No shimmer, no shine, just history in her hands. She didn't smile, she didn't look around. She just stood there, perfectly still. A hush swept the auditorium as the room waited, some with amusement, others with anticipation. Maya's breath was slow and steady. 1 second. 2. 5. She didn't flinch beneath the weight of their eyes. Her fingers adjusted the strings with a quiet precision. Then, in a motion so gentle it was almost imperceptible, she raised her bow. The first note came like a whisper in the dark. Thin. Raw. But before anyone could dismiss it, it deepened. Richer. Fuller. Spilling into the silence with a haunting beauty that wrapped itself around the audience's lungs and squeezed. The melody didn't ask for permission. It simply arrived. The sound rose like a memory long buried, trembling with pain and power. Her violin didn't sing. It wept, a slow cry that told the story of forgotten people sweeping corridors, dreams left in storage rooms, the echo of a mother's lullaby fading too soon. And yet, beneath the sorrow, there was something rising. Resilience. Rebellion. A kind of hope that burned quiet but fierce. Every note pulled the room deeper into her world. Each crescendo gripped the air, holding it hostage. No longer a child with a broken instrument, Maya became something else entirely, an unseen spirit standing in full command of the stage. Her eyes never lifted, but her soul filled the room. Her bow moved like a dancer who had spent a lifetime, waiting for this moment, and now, finally free, let every ounce of pain pour into every measure. The audience forgot to breathe. Even the most confident students, those who once laughed loudest, sat frozen, their gazes fixed to the floor or locked in stunned silence. Maya didn't falter. Her hands trembled slightly under the stage light, but the music never did. Mr. Langston, once composed, now leaned forward in his seat, his expression losing shape, confidence unraveling into disbelief. His arms, once so tightly crossed, now hung limply by his side. And still she played. The piece reached its height, notes spiraling upward like a soul begging the world to understand its worth. Then came the slow, gentle descent, a final bridge, soft and aching, like a goodbye whispered through clenched teeth. Her bow hovered at the end, one last note stretching so thin across the strings it nearly disappeared. And then, silence. No rustling programs. No coughing. Just stillness. The audience sat frozen in time, unable to move, uncertain how to follow what they had just witnessed. Maya lowered the violin from her chin. Her eyes lifted, not in defiance, but in quiet completion. She had said everything without speaking a single word. The curtain didn't fall. The applause didn't come, not yet, because in that moment, silence was the only response worthy of what had just been heard. For a moment after the last note faded, the room remained suspended in silence. No applause, no movement, just stunned stillness as if the air itself had been changed by the sound Maya had pulled from that broken violin. The audience seemed unsure how to respond. Applause felt too small, too abrupt. Maya stood motionless, eyes steady but distant, still inside the music she had just shared. Then, slowly, a single pair of hands began to clap. It came from the back of the room, rhythmic, deliberate, and unashamed. Samuel Brooks, standing in the shadows beneath the balcony, clapped with the kind of pride that didn't need permission. The sound echoed across the stunned auditorium like a challenge to everyone who had doubted her. One by one, others followed. At first, hesitant, like waking from a dream. Then, more confident, building into a wave. The same students who whispered. Insults now found themselves rising to their feet, unable to deny what they had just witnessed. Teachers exchanged glances, some nodding slowly, others still stunned into wide-eyed silence. The applause became thunderous, but Maya didn't bow. She simply turned her gaze to the man in the back of the room, the only one who had believed in her before anyone else had even bothered to look. Mr. Langston stood rigid by the side of the stage, his arms limp, his lips parted but unable to form words. His eyes, fixed on Maya, were no longer filled with superiority. They were searching, almost desperate. As the clapping died down and the lights softened, he stepped forward, his polished shoes tapping lightly on the wooden floor. He approached Maya, each step heavier than the last until he stood in front of her, small now, despite his stature. "Where did you learn to play like that?" he asked, his voice dry, uneven, as though asking cost him something. Maya turned slightly and glanced toward the back of the auditorium. Her voice was soft but unwavering. "From him," she said. Langston followed her gaze, and his breath caught as he saw Samuel clearly for the first time, not as a janitor or background figure, but as a man with eyes filled with music, loss, and truth. Something shifted in Langston's face. He looked back at Maya, and then to the violin in her hand. The melody she had played still echoed faintly in his mind. It was familiar, painfully so. And then, like a photograph developing in slow motion, recognition struck. Years ago, on a rainy afternoon in a forgotten part of the city, a younger Langston had passed a piece of handwritten music to a street performer, a young man playing for coins beneath a flickering street lamp. The man's hands were gifted, but his appearance was unrefined, his background unknown. Langston had offered the sheet, out of pity, perhaps curiosity, and quickly walked away without learning his name. That man had been Samuel Brooks. A flash of that memory returned now with painful clarity, the same soul-stirring cadence, the way the notes swelled with emotion. Maya hadn't just played music tonight. She had revived something Langston had discarded long ago, an act of careless dismissal that had come full circle. His lips parted again, but no apology came. What words could possibly undo what he had built his reputation upon? The stage, the status, the separation. What was once mockery had become a mirror. In Maya's performance, Langston saw not only the brilliance he had ignored, but also the bias he had upheld, the gate he had guarded so tightly, only to realize it had kept out the very kind of music that could truly move the world. His silence stretched long, longer than any pause in the recital, until finally he bowed his head, not to Maya, but to the truth. And in that moment, Maya didn't need his words. His silence said everything. In the days following the recital, the atmosphere at Sterling Heights Academy shifted in ways no one could have predicted. The applause may have faded, but the echo of Maya's performance lingered in every corridor, every whispered conversation, every quiet moment of reflection. Mr. Langston, once the unshakable pillar of the music department, surprised the entire faculty when he submitted his resignation. In his letter, he wrote not of retirement or exhaustion, but of reckoning. He acknowledged publicly what he had long denied to himself, that true talent knows no rank, no lineage, no social class. Standing before the student body one final time, he turned toward Maya, his voice more humble than anyone had ever heard. "You reminded me," he said slowly, "what music is truly meant to do, and what I was too proud to hear." The Academy responded swiftly, offering Maya a full scholarship that covered everything from tuition to private lessons to national performance opportunities. But the most extraordinary gesture wasn't directed at her. It was offered to her father. The board extended an invitation for Samuel Brooks to join the music faculty as a guest instructor in improvisation and emotional composition. They called it a unique opportunity, but Maya knew it was something far more meaningful. A long overdue acknowledgement of the man who had kept music alive without applause, who had passed down genius in silence and shadows. Word of the recital spread beyond the Academy's walls. A recording of Maya's performance, uploaded anonymously by a student, went viral, pulling in millions of views and hundreds of heartfelt comments. But even as her name rose in circles of prestige, Maya remained grounded. The same students who once mocked her now approached her with genuine curiosity, asking how she shaped sound so intimately, how she played without fear. Maya never answered with pride. She simply guided them with calm patience, her voice steady and warm. "It's not about perfection," she'd say. "It's about truth." Broader communities. Kids whose talent didn't come from private tutors or generations of wealth. In rehearsal rooms, you could hear not just the usual symphonies and sonatas, but rhythms rooted in jazz, soul, and culture once dismissed. The air no longer smelled only of polish and tradition. It pulsed with something alive and inclusive. A mural was commissioned for the main hallway, a painting of Mia and Samuel standing beneath a glowing streetlight, a violin resting between them. The streetlight symbolized where the journey began. The violin, where it had always lived. Maya traveled often, invited to perform in grand concert halls from New York to Paris. But no matter how far she went, she always returned home, to the basement room at Sterling Heights, now transformed into a creative space for overlooked talent. There she taught students who, like her, had once felt invisible. Her growth wasn't loud or showy. It was steady, rooted in dignity. She carried herself with quiet strength, never seeking revenge for how she had been treated, never throwing back the cruelty that once surrounded her. Instead, she passed on music like a lantern, lighting paths for others who still walked in the dark. People often asked her what drove her to play the way she did. She'd pause, think, and offer the same answer every time. "I just played what no one ever asked me to say." And in that, she revealed the truest melody of all, the one born not from stage lights or applause, but from the resilience to speak, even when no one listens, and to keep playing until they do. Not every voice is heard the first time it speaks. Some begin in broom closets, stairwells, or dusty basements, in places where no one ever thinks to listen. They are quiet not because they lack something, but because the world never asked them to be loud. Maya Brooks was one of those voices. She didn't beg for attention. She didn't demand a spotlight. She simply waited until the moment the world finally paused long enough to hear her. And when it did, she didn't whisper. She played. Her music didn't just fill a room, it rewrote the rules of who belongs in it. Because talent, like truth, always finds its way to the light, no matter how deeply it's buried. If you've ever been overlooked, dismissed, or judged before being seen, then Maya's story is yours too. So tell us, have you ever been the underdog? Have you ever had to prove yourself just to be heard? Share your story in the comments. And if this touched your heart, share it with someone who's still waiting for their moment. Someone who needs to be reminded. Greatness doesn't ask for permission. It simply plays. Thanks for being here. We'll see you in the next story, where the forgotten, the quiet, and the underestimated become unforgettable.